Welcome everyone, Costin here with my campaign overview guide for Queek, Headtaker of the Skaven, who is a fairly formidable legendary lord in terms of his own personal combat ability. Though he doesn't necessarily have the best campaign benefits, he does have a pretty good starting position, where the only legendary lord that could be a threat, and not necessarily so to him early on, is Skarbrand. Later on, he will encounter Forgrim, Warzag, and others, but not having a legendary lord to contend with at the very start of your campaign is actually a huge benefit. But first, let's talk a bit about Skaven. Skaven are a good race, though they are a race with certain drawbacks. Many of their units have low armor and low leadership, so they tend to do poorly in auto-resolve. But they do actually have a good amount of combat power. Or you can just mass them in significant numbers, and quantity has its own quality. So when looking at the Skaven, some of the best units you can get are, of course, from the Hidden Lair. You want to get Night Runners, and then eventually you want to get the Assassin Hideout for Gutter Runners, and Gutter Runners with Slings especially. And maybe Gutter Runners, Slingers with Poison, so to weaken enemy units via the poison. You do have a good hero selection with Engineers, Chieftain, Assassins giving you replenishment. And you do have a good economy, but the thing about that economy is that it requires you to hold a significant number of settlements or control entire provinces to really make use of that. There is the Warpstone reactor chain, which improves the income within a particular province for all the structures. And the way the Skaven economy works, they have a bunch of buildings that on their own don't generate that much income, but when you add them together, when you get the Warpstone reactor, Skaven can generate a significant amount of economic output. Though they are going to be limited, the main limitation in their faction is going to be, of course, food. You gain food from battles, commandments, Skaven undercities, but you do spend it, you do have a food upkeep, especially the more you grow, the more armies you have, the more food you'll be spending each turn. And you can actually get into a food deficit later on in the campaign. And that can, of course, be a pretty major issue. But you do have numbers, you do have the economic output. You are, however, limited by food. You also have good lore choices in terms of the Graciers, the Master Assassins, the Warlock Masters, and the Warlords. I would say the Master Assassins are some of the best you can get early on, for the simple reason that they'll buff the Night Runners and Gutter Runners that you want to use specifically. They have this skill right here, the Shuriken Jitsu, which will increase their missile strength by 10%. And then they also get concealment bombs, expert ambushers, so they have a higher ambush success chance, as well, like just giving concealment bombs for those Night Runners and Gutter Runner units, which improves their combat ability by quite a bit. Now let's talk a bit about Queek's situation. He starts in the Misty Mountain, and he has the Clan Moor's headquarters, which allows him to recruit chieftains from turn 1, and he also has hero capacity +2 for chieftains, an upkeep minus 25% for Storm Vermin and Clan Rats, and you can recruit Clan Rats from the Clan Moor's headquarters as well. Just regular Clan Rats, not Clan Rats with shields, but you don't necessarily need to worry too much about those, because you're eventually going to replace them. Then he can get can purchase up to 5 additional levels of Menace Below, so he can summon Clan Rats to deal with artillery, to pin down ranged units, and then he has a lower food cost for additional uses of Menace Below. Queek himself has significant advantages in combat, especially when it comes to dwarves and greenskins, gaining significant melee attack and weapon strength when fighting them for his own army, as well as getting 2 additional uses of Menace Below. So you'll just be storming your enemy with Clan Rats within the first few turns of the campaign. He does get Frenzy for himself. He has Fear, as well as Loyalty for Warlord recruits, so at cost of Gracier recruit loyalty. He gets a significant amount of casualty replenishment, +8%, which stacks with the one that you can get from Assassin heroes. He gets a control benefit in all provinces, +2, as well as a 25% ambush success chance. And he also gets a recruit rank +4 for Storm Vermin and recruitment duration. Though you don't necessarily want to make significant armies of Storm Vermin when you are playing as any Skaven Lord. He also has 2 good items with a decent enough, like with decent enough stats, like 10% ward save, melee defense, though he doesn't really have a significant set bonus with them. Though that 25% allegiance points gain with Skaven is pretty good. So what should you do at Queek? Well, one of the things the first thing you want to do is go to the Misty Mountains and get the Hidden Lair. You won't be able to upgrade it to full, which would require tier 4, but even getting it to tier 3 is fairly substantial, because you want those gutter runners with slings and poison being quite useful. But even at level 1, which takes 2 turns, you'll be able to recruit assassin heroes, and you will be able to get free chieftains very early on. You start with 1 chieftain, you can get 2 more within the first turn once you take over this particular settlement. There is a fairly weak greenskin army over here, and you're fighting Gorfang Rotgut over here in the Crooked Fang Fort. Within 2 turns, you can take Carrick Asgal and then go for Crooked Fang Fort. What you should recruit early on, like, just get clan rats until the Hidden Lair is finished. Once it is finished, switch your production to Night Runners with slings. So you'll have a solid enough front line along with a pretty decent range line. You also start with Plague Claw catapults, Gutter Runners with slings, Storm Vermin with halberds, and Storm Vermin with sword and shield. But really, the power that you do have as Queek is that Queek himself is a monster in combat, and you can get up to 5 heroes very early on in your campaign. My advice, by the way, when it comes to taking over settlements, is you want to take this as a level 1 settlement, and you want to spend the food to get Carrick Asgal as a level 3. The reason you want to get it as a level 3 is so you can get a Warlock Engineer from the Construction Cavern. And, of course, to also get the Warpstone Reactor. And then after that, you seek a fight with Gorfang. It may be a bit of a difficult fight, but it is a winnable one early on in the campaign. Once that's sorted out, we need to look at the campaign situation. Like, once you've dealt with Gorfang, you will find yourself in a position where you're still at war with the Crooked Moon mutinous Gits, who do have Carrick 8 Peaks, which you do want. You also start with the Underkeep and Carrick 8 Peaks, which gives you army ability uses +6 for menace below, which can be pretty useful when you're trying to attack Carrick 8 Peaks. But your priority shouldn't be to attack Carrick 8 Peaks. You might benefit, by the way, from building certain structures over here in Carrick 8 Peaks in the Undercity, so that when you do end up attacking it, you will end up stronger for it. But your priority should be to take the Crooked Fang Fort. I wouldn't necessarily spend food on this, but you could get it to tier 2 and tier 3 itself, but you won't have money necessarily to get all the structures there. But once that's done, your priority should be to try and save Clan Vermin. Now, you can get a lot of agreements turn 1 with Clan Vermin. They start with absolutely nothing, just a Lord with no units over here in Black Crag. And you can get quite a bit of money from him on turn 1. But your priority is to try and save Clan Vermin so you can actually have a military ally. Because the problem is Skaven are disliked by a lot of factions, by the vast majority of factions. Very few factions have good relations with them, and even then there's still some level of aversion. Like, consider that the vampire counts here in the Silver Host do have a level of aversion. You do start with a non-aggression pact with the Silver Host. I would wait 10 turns, get rid of that, 10 turns after that, or maybe even faster. I would go take Lamia to give it to Khalida if you can afford to spare an army. Because if you do so, you might get a defensive alliance with Khalida, and Khalida can be a pretty useful ally to have in a campaign. Hell, any ally can be useful in a Skaven campaign, they'll help a lot. But the one ally you want to save is, of course, Clan Vermin. In fact, you might want to make a defensive alliance with them turn 1 instead of taking their money so that they can help you out. Okay, but once you take the Crooked Fang Fort, your priority should be to take down Carrick Azul. The reason behind this is Cazador over here, he's going to build an entire stack, maybe 2 stacks, and he's going to go for Black Crag. He will win this battle if you don't go support Clan Vermin. But I'm not talking about direct support, I'm talking here of going from Crooked Fang Fort, conquering the Eastern Badlands, then threatening the Southern World Edge Mountains. This will force Cazador in most situations to pull back from Black Crag, not attacking, not siege it, to deal with you. And you are quite capable of dealing with that. Now, the problem over here is that you've got Emmerich to the east. And Emmerich really hates Skaven. Like, High Elves, I think, have a -100 aversion, and Emmerich is quite powerful in battle. You don't necessarily want to fight him, though, to be fair, Emmerich is going to have a lot of issues in his campaign, including Tretch Craventail, as well as the Ogres over here. Like, he's going to have issues to deal with. He may not devote the resources necessary to take you out. And you should ignore him if you can. Like, he might attack you with a smaller army over here in Southern World Edge Mountains. But outside of attacks like that, he shouldn't devote his entire, his main army to attack you, because he's going to be using that army to deal with the other factions that he's at war with. So you want to take Caracazul. Once that's sorted out, you want to take Carrick 8 Peaks, Valea Sorrow, Carrick 8 Peaks. It is a hard battle. There is a powerful army over here. Like, there's a 20-man garrison force here, and a pretty powerful garrison force in Carrick 8 Peaks itself. But it is a winnable battle, especially if you've gotten a lot of range units, and with the Plague Claws and Menace below, you might be able to weaken them. It might take you 2 turns of sieging it to be able to do so, but there is certainly a dead zone in Orcish settlements, in Greenskin settlements. You can take and so you can do damage from range, not take any return, and eventually maybe auto-resolve it one way or another. Though just bear in mind, the Crooked Moon Mutinous Kits are going to throw multiple stacks against you. Another issue, though, is going to be Warzag. Warzag is quite likely going to declare war on you during the course of your campaign, and he's going to throw multiple stacks against you. You're quite capable of dealing with that. You just got to be careful with your armies. Generally speaking, he's going to try and attack these settlements, and since they're provincial capitals, they're going to be difficult for him to assault. What you should do is, like, use Queek's army on his own to to conquer territory, while you build a second army, like under an assassin lord, to help support the defense of your territories. That should be your plan. With regards to Scarbrand, you should pay for this non-aggression. Like, you're paying protection money to Scarbrand so he doesn't attack you early on in his campaign. You don't want to deal with Scarbrand. I mean, you can beat Scarbrand, but the problem is, and this is an issue for pretty much everyone that starts in your Scarbrand, Scarbrand is a pain in the neck to deal with, because you've got other issues to tackle. Like, if you're playing as Foric, you want to take Lamia, then you want to deal with Queek. You don't have time to deal with the Death Gorge and try and take all of Scarbrand's territory. If you're playing as Cetra, you've got business to deal with in the south and the west. If you're playing as Queek, you have stuff to deal with in the north. Now, thankfully, you can at least get a non-aggression pact with Scarbrand on turn 1, so no issues there whatsoever. And yeah, eliminate the Silver Host, make and if you sell Lamia to Khalida, you'll probably get a defensive alliance at least with her. If you help her take more territory, you might be able to get a military alliance, and she can be quite useful. I mean, Forik is going to be a problem in this campaign. He's going to take out Arcos, and he's going to march towards you. So you're kind of on a timer. Like, you want to take as much territory here in the eastern part of the Badlands, move on north, support Clan Vermin, deal with Warzag, and then with Clan Vermin, you should be in a great position to take the entirety of the Blood River Valley and take the Silver Road. One thing to mention about the Skaven is that they can actually make a good amount of income from trade, especially as you have gemstones here in a Carrick Asgal that you can build up. You also have timber, so you have trade resources and can get a pretty decent amount of money from those trade resources. Also salt over here in Carrick Azul that you can take advantage of, and you should be taking advantage of those trade resources, getting trade partners, getting a trade income up to speed. But yeah, once you've dealt with Warzag, you should go for the Dwarven Capital, or you could go for Emmerich. One thing to mention is you want to set up undercities if you're playing as the Skaven. The best way to do this, of course, is to get the Scheme of Doom. This is what I'd personally do. Is like, get the Scheme of Doom. It's pretty cheap. And this will give you a Warlock Engineer hero that will allow you to build a special undercity that increases your Warlock Engineer capacity. Because otherwise, you're going to have to wait until tier 4 to start increasing, and actually tier 5 to be able to start increasing that Warlock Engineer capacity. So you want to increase it because they're really, really good heroes. They buff your ranged units. They increase the mobility on the campaign, and the best thing you could do is like set an undercity under something like Pig Barter, or maybe even under under Greece's core territories. But Pegbarter would probably be a good position because like it could spread to all these territories here, and you get the structures. In the Undercity specifically, you want to get this particular structure, the subterranean pit, and eventually once it's spread enough, what you can use Undercities for is like Scavenger Raiders, which can generate Scavenger Horde, which can generate free food. Just make sure your discoverability doesn't go too high, because obviously that is going to create issues in your campaign if you lose Undercities. The way to deal with that is you can get the deeper tunnels, which won't have the upkeep, the maintenance cost of the murder holes. Though you will lose visibility over the region where the Undercity is in, though that's not necessarily too big of a problem as far as I'm concerned. Or you could, then once you have enough income, you could just go for the regular structure, reduce your discoverability. But I mostly use Undercities for Warlock Engineer Labs for the hero capacity there through this particular scheme. That does have a 30-turn cooldown, so just bear in mind it's only really useful in the early game. It just increases your hero capacity per early game from 1 Warlock Engineer to 2 until you start getting those tier 5 settlements. Let's look at campaign victory conditions. So you need to deal with Belegar, you need to deal with Skarsnik and Belegar, though it's not really too big of an issue to deal with Skarsnik. Belegar is some effort, but you might want to head over west anyway. Like, you would want to deal with Warzag, maybe eventually deal with, like, once you've dealt with Warzag, once you've dealt with Forgrim and Skarsnik, you might want to then go over to cross the sea here and go for Belegar. Just worth saying that you might not want to take the deep Deadrock Gap yourself. You might want to give it to Clan Rictus, or you might want to give it to Clan Vermin. And you want to make alliances with both Clan Vermin and Clan Rictus. You will want to confederate them, especially Tretch. Not because Tretch is worth a damn, it's rather the Crookback Mountain is a really valuable settlement because of the Rictus Great Clan whole, because of the significant benefits in trade tariffs, tradable resources, food generated, and income generated. But you do want to keep them as allies. You do want to use Clan Vermin and Clan Rictus to secure your eastern and northern flanks while you move to the west. Moving to the west, of course, will bring you in contact with Ikaclaw if you can confederate Ikaclaw or take Skaven Blight for yourself for military force. But either way works. But if you do get Ikaclaw, that is a substantial amount of benefits for your faction. And of course, Skaven Blight is an amazing settlement to get. I would not necessarily take over the entirety of the vaults. It can be a bit of an issue. Or you could take out Belegar and give this territory to Ikaclaw and eventually start building up your diplomatic relations with him. Because one of the things you don't want to do too early on in your campaign is end up fighting with the entirety of Athel-Loren. If you take the vaults, you're going to end up fighting the entirety of Athel-Loren, as well as fighting Balthazar Gelt. You might want to take the western border princes, though, in Sartosa, because they're really good provinces. Like, the western border princes can be the economic heart of your empire, but you do have choices. You do have several choices. You can go west, you can go north, you can go east, you can go south if you so desire. Personally, I would go west just to secure that short campaign victory condition. Long campaign victory condition, you're basically forced to control much of the Badlands and as well as some other territories there, but primarily the Badlands. So you want to take over all of this area of the game. Don't necessarily bother with the Darklands. Like, you can wipe out Emmerich, give the territory to Clan Rictus, have them form up, have them protect your eastern flank until you're ready to confederate to them, until you've built up enough diplomatic relations. But it's the diplomacy, surprisingly enough, can be the key to a lot of Skaven campaigns, because many factions will hate you. So if you're protecting your fellow Skaven, if you actually engage in Skaven cooperation, you're actually going to be in a much stronger campaign position, as opposed to playing a very stereotypical Skaven who would backstab his fellow rats and just end up dying. That would be the proper Skaven lore-friendly plan, but it's not the best plan. It's a bit amusing that the Skaven, which is a very selfish race of selfish individuals, and psychopaths, to put them mildly. In fact, I think Skaven are even far worse than that. Actually thrive if they engage in diplomacy, cooperation and being good allies. Yeah, shocking enough. But I guess that's lore appropriate because it's mentioned in lore that the main thing that holds the Skaven back from taking over the entire world is then fighting between themselves. So if you can get Claw and Tretch as allies, you'll be in a stronger position. Of course, you're in no position to, say, Frot or Skrolk. That is a problem. But you might be able to march east. If you were so decided, you could march far east and save Snitch. If you could get Snitch as a legendary lord in your faction, if you could confederate with him, that would give you a substantial amount of power. Or you could play with the defeated legendary lords mod to be able to get Snitch when he does inevitably die. Like, I think every single legendary lord of Skaven ends up losing when played by the AI on legendary difficulty. So you could get them for the defeated legendary lords mod, and imagine playing a Skaven faction with all of them, with all the Skaven legendary lords. That would be an incredible amount of power, and something I would probably recommend for the Skaven at least. Anyway, Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications. Stay tuned for more. Just army-wise, one last thing to mention. Army-wise, you do want to focus primarily on gut runners, maybe some store vermin for Queek. But yeah, focus primarily on gut runners with slings, then depth runners, Ashen sorcerers, of course, for magic, like just the hero capacity in general. Plague monks are not too important, I'd argue, but engineers, chieftains, assassins, pretty good. Pretty good to have, like packmasters and plague priests, not too important from my perspective. And you want to get plague claws as artillery, and then eventually what you want to get during the course of your faction is you want to get not rattling gunners but poison wind mortars, and before that poison wind globadiers, because they have a substantial amount of combat ability. So yeah, stay tuned for more.